Hi, this is Travis Shaw, Director of Education with the Virginia Piedmont Heritage Area, standing outside the entrance to historic Mickie Gordon Park, just outside of Middleburg, Virginia. Mickie Gordon is an important component of the historical African American community that once thrived around the Middleburg area in the early part of the 20th century. Mickie Gordon Park is located just outside of a historic village known as Maxville. Maxville has its roots in the 19th century when much of the land that we are now standing on was owned by the McVeigh family. McVeighs owned several large plantations in the area that relied heavily on enslaved African Americans, and many of those enslaved people settled along what was then the Ashby's Gap Turnpike, now modern Route 50. And over the years, a small community grew up, not only consisting of their homes, but also warehouses and other outbuildings associated with the McVeigh plantations. After emancipation, this area became a hub of many of the newly freed families. They would settle here in Maxville as well as in other nearby communities such as St. Louis, Howardsville, Willisville. And this park, this particular location, is an important part of that story. By the early 20th century, this park was owned by William Nathaniel Hall. Hall is a name that some of you may be familiar with. He was a prominent African-American builder who had his business located in the Middleburg area, but the impact of his business goes far beyond southern Loudoun County. He's famous for constructing many of the buildings that now stand in Middleburg, including the old bank, now the Oyster Bar, including the Upperville Post Office, including several other buildings throughout Loudoun County, a new wing of the Loudoun Hospital up in Leesburg, as well as buildings as far away as Washington, D.C. He even helped to reconstruct several historic buildings on the property of Mount Vernon. So an incredible impact, not just in this area, but elsewhere. And as part of his business, Hall is going to buy up several properties around the Middleburg area, including the one that we're now standing on, and what became known as Hall's Park. During the early 20th century, many of the African American community in Middleburg would come to what became known as Hall's Park, and it became a sort of sanctuary in the days of Jim Crow. The Oddfellows organizations in Middleburg were especially keen to use this property. They had 3 separate stepping out days during the course of the year: in Memorial Day, the 4th of July, and in early September around Labor Day, in which they would organize massive parades in Middleburg that would include most of the African American community, not only from the town but the surrounding area. Hundreds of people would come out. They would come here to Hall Park, they would have horse races, they would have barbecues and picnics, marching bands would play throughout the day, and then the highlight of the day was oftentimes the baseball games that were played here. In an era when many public spaces in Loudoun County were segregated by race, Hall Park became a place where African Americans from the community could come and play organized sports, and baseball became a mainstay of this park. The park here was home to a team known as the Middleburg Braves, an African-American team who styled themselves after the Boston Braves of the early 20th century. And baseball would continue to play an important role here at what would become known as Mickie Gordon Park later on in the 20th century. So I'm now standing on what's known as Pop Gordon Field, the historic baseball field here at Mickie Gordon Park. And it's actually named for Mickie Gordon's father, Raymond Pop Gordon, a Loudoun County baseball legend in his own right. Pop Gordon began playing for the Middleburg men's team in the 1920s and would eventually go on to coach the team as well as become president of the Loudoun County Baseball League. During his time as coach, his son, William Mickie Gordon, would play for the Middleburg men's team beginning at the age of 13. Obviously a phenomenal baseball player. He's going to play for the Middleburg men's team throughout most of the 20th century. By the 1960s, he's taken it a step further, and he's brought Babe Ruth baseball here to Loudoun County. Looking for an opportunity to expand baseball not just to younger children and students, but to older teens and adults as well. So he's very instrumental in the establishment of the Babe Ruth Baseball League here in Loudoun County, going so far as to bring the Babe Ruth International Series to Loudoun County. It was played up at Fireman's Field in Purcellville. So a tremendous figure in the history of baseball in Loudoun County. He coached the Babe Ruth League all the way up until his death in 1996. And Pop Gordon Field, this field that was named for his father, was the home field for Middleburg's team through most of those years. Aside from being an incredible influence on baseball here in Loudoun County, though, Mickie Gordon was also well known for his philanthropy as well. In establishing the Babe Ruth Baseball League here in Loudoun County, one of his main goals was to make sure that disadvantaged teenagers had a safe place to go, had a constructive pastime to take part in, and his philosophy was all about making sure that everyone could play. So in an age of segregation, when many of the teams in Loudoun County were segregated, Mickie Gordon had African-American players on his team. He made sure that if players did not have rides to games, that he would give them rides himself. He scoured the community for donations to make sure that the players always had uniforms and equipment to play, to make sure that anyone who loved baseball had an opportunity to play. So it was very fitting that Mickie Gordon Park was named after him after his death in 1996, a testament to not only his love of baseball, but his love of community and the work that he did here in Loudoun County. In this field behind me, archaeologists have found evidence of Native American inhabitation going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. So clearly this area has drawn people for a long, long time, generations. It's drawn both of you to this area recently. We're talking to two local residents who live here near Mickie Gordon Park. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to this area.
Oh my gosh, well, I moved here 5 years ago from New York, Long Island. Big horse country, rural area, unfortunately, became developed, and I wanted to recapture that rural life, horse country, the serenity. Came for a visit 6 years ago and fell in love with the area, and my family just said, let's just get up and go, and that's what we did. So we came and have not looked back, never regretted it. It's just, I mean, it's paradise. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. So that's kind of what brought me here.
And Holly, you have roots in New York as well, but you've been here in Virginia for a while.
Right, since 1974, and have lived all over Northern Virginia. Moved out here 3 years ago. Fell in love with the park. It was part of what, drew us to this location, because my husband and I both work pretty stressful jobs, and it was sort of like a sanctuary from chaos. I really believe this park has always provided sanctuary for a long, long time. Ancestral Native Indigenous American tribe hunting grounds here, the history during segregation. I know that a lot of people feel relaxed once they hit that drive at 15, okay, heading west on 50, and you just feel everything go away. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be. And we're grateful for the park in its current state, with the abundance of nature, the black bear cubs we see here, the deer, the wild turkey. It's just a really, really, it's just a really delightful place to be.
I think it transcends your soul. It really does.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking untold generations of people. Native Americans living here, the McVeighs, the plantations were here, the enslaved people. During the Civil War, we have the battles of Aldie, Middleburg, and Upperville happening right across the street along the turnpike. I mean, this is ground that's been, as I said, brought people here for generations.
Right. And we lose the concept too, which is particular in my culture, which is Choctaw, that we live with the land. Okay, not on it. And that's an important thing when you look at, the peacefulness and the wildlife that's here, and just, the gentle breezes. You have to remember to live with the land.
Right.
I mean, that's such an important part of what we do at the Heritage Area. Our motto is preservation through education. People aren't going to care enough to protect these spaces if they don't know why they're important, if they don't recognize the importance, the history, the landscape,
Yep.
the flora, the fauna.
Mhm.
You know, these are historical resources, natural resources that belong to us all. We've all got to take care of them.